whether you're a small business, a big business, a mighty startup, you're always evolving, you're always changing, you're always growing. And so I'm here with my partners today with Health Mavens. I'm Bar Van Sumeren. I've got Marian Temesferi and Martha Porter Pfizer here. And we are just talking about our learnings from this year. And maybe this will resonate with you on how you're growing your organization, because we've got a couple key tips and tricks for you this year. Welcome, guys.
Hello.
Hello. Hey, I was thinking we could kick off with one little story. One time, what we usually do when we start a growth project is often we'll ask a question to an organization, right? What do you do? How does your company work? What are you good at? How do you stand out from the crowd? And we kind of ask, the same question to a whole team at the company. And oftentimes we don't get the same answer. And that really leads us to kind of the first topic area that we're going to go over, which is get the foundation right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
for sure. Talk a little bit about that, because you lead that effort for us quite a bit.
Yeah. And you'd think I would stop being amazed every time. And it's still an aha for me, or I have to keep remembering whenever we talk with a new client or a new startup, it's a small group of people. It might be one or two people, and they are 100% focused on getting their product or service out, right? And they're not really thinking about their brand or what their brand is. And they're maybe not even thinking about how they're going to go to market, though they should be. And they may not even be thinking, like not being completely empathetically immersed in their audience, though they should be. So I think that's why we have created the tools that we have to help guide leadership teams in startups and scale-ups to build sort of a foundational brand platform that becomes the springboard for all of their communications and what they stand for and how they talk and go to market and who they talk to.
Right. Why is that people, I guess it's the same idea that marketers don't actually market themselves sometimes, right? Because we're so immersed in the work.
Well, yeah, pot, meat, kettle here.
Right. And so, they're just immersed in their work, right? And they're trying to deliver on what the customer needs. And sometimes they're not thinking about every way that they communicate with customers. So talk about the brand platform. What is that?
Yeah. And, I think it's a scary thing, or it might be intimidating to some people, because I think often it's thought of from a B2B, companies seem to think of it's going to be this big comprehensive consumer platform. And really for startups, it's, a minimal viable brand is, I think, a technical term. And I think just call it our startup brand platform. And it's kind of an abbreviated version, but I guess the main components are purpose, target audience, core message, support points, then a visual interpretation or visual representation. So that's your logo and your color palette, and then language and tone. And if you can cover those things and identify and write them in stone, then that becomes the guide for everybody within the company and outside the company. So the next time we go around and ask everybody in every department, hey, what are you all about? What do you sell? What do you do? They're all going to be able to say the same thing and be consistent.
Yeah. In fact, I've heard you call it a brand manifesto, right? It's like the cheering. It's what we go to market and how we go to market, right?
Yeah. I mean, and that's a component of the whole thing. Yeah. It's like your little rally cry.
Martha, one of the things that we've seen over and over again, and I think our audience would love to hear your perspective on this, is that when people start companies, they create a brand, they create a logo, they get all excited about it. And it's often very internally driven is maybe the wrong way to put it, but it's driven from the point of view of, oh my God, I have this great product or service and I'm going to put it out there and I'm going to do all this stuff to build around it. Talk a little bit about the process that we go through to help shift that into something that is resonating in the marketplace.
Yeah. Well, and I suspect you'll be talking a little bit about this too later on in this discussion. But really focusing on the audience and the market. We have like a little worksheet actually that's super helpful. I can't remember what it's called, but it answers, you have to fill in the blank. Blank is a company that does what?
Mm-hmm.
For whom, so that they can, because they blank, for the end result of blank.
Right.
And that sort of walks everybody through the meat and potatoes of those important points.
Often we find that sometimes the client has maybe a generalized perspective of what the brand platform means, right?
Yeah.
It's a logo, or it's the colors in my logo.
Yeah.
Right.
How do we kind of flip their switch on that it's much more than that?
That's hard, right? I mean, I don't even know if we can answer that, because it's been a different adventure or exercise for each client. And actually, this is kind of a nebulous woo-woo expression, but it really comes down to empathy for your customer. If you're only thinking about yourself through your own goggles of your product, and you're only talking about your features and benefits, that doesn't draw me in. That puts up a wall between you and your customer. But if you're saying, hey, we're here because you have a problem and we can help you with that problem. And hey, isn't this fun? We'll do it together and we're engaging. That brings people in. And having the empathy to understand what those people need is kind of an important component that you don't get from, hey, here's my logo and here are the proof points for why this is a great product.
So what are some of the pieces, like what beyond the logo, what are some of the pieces that are so important in this foundation?
Well, certainly your purpose, having the reason why you're in business. And that can be something as simple as I completed a triathlon and it transformed my life. So now I'm going to start a training program for everyone in the world, right? Or it can be, super complex. We're a scientific team. We're a team of scientists. We have discovered, or we're working on new sustainable proteins to feed a hungry world, right? So, but having that purpose really, it's another way of drawing people in, right? It's your story. The core
I love
message.
the way that you talked about empathy. This is, so often, right? Especially in product companies, people are like, let me show you my new product, right? Rather than
so excited about it. Here's the science.
yeah. Right. Rather than let me show you, let me connect the dots on how this solves what you're looking for. Right. And that's the different perspective that we need to take.
But, we don't want our clients and partners to lose that zeal. Show me, here's my product. I got to show it to you because that's great. So we're not negating. We don't want to negate that, but it has to come with an open aperture from someone on the other side of the table saying, hey, I need something. What do you got?
I sometimes feel like this part of the process that we go through, and we do it for every client, is really our job is to be a translator. Our job is to, first of all, in their language, articulate who they are, what they do, what problem they're solving, who they're solving it for, and then to translate that into all the elements that resonate with the audiences that they need to talk to.
Yes.
Is that fair? That's sometimes how I feel.
Yes. Yeah. That's very fair. And a good test to see if you're doing it right is on your website, right? So I think we've all seen that we may have a client who's just got a logo and a website, but the website isn't really optimized for marketing, and it isn't built on those foundational brand elements. So it's kind of you can't even tell what the company does sometimes, I think. But bringing those sensibilities into what your audience needs and different audiences within your main audience baking all that into your website is super important too.
So we've talked about this too, right? Your website is your storefront for sure, and it's part of your your brand platform. It's part of your brand, etc. Is it possible for you to talk to all these different audiences on that site? I mean, some people think that that's not really possible. I don't know. I find that you could probably do it, but you have to be very careful.
Yes. And I mean, it usually starts out your homepage is more about the company and the big picture things, but that's what blog posts are for, or landing pages for campaigns targeting different stakeholders in your audience lineup.
Got it.
So, yeah.
All right. So we're talking a lot about audience, right? Marian, I know we've dug into this like a million times, but when we come into a new organization, it's like forensics on the audience, and you kind of run that gambit for us. Talk a little bit about that.
All right. So Martha's talked a little bit about the foundation. So when you have the foundation, and you've essentially as a founder, or even as the leader of a company that may have been founded by somebody, but you're kind of in that startup scale up phase. So there's a lot of excitement. You created a product or service to solve a pain point. And that pain point may or may not relate to you directly. And we have some really good examples of that we can talk about. But oftentimes it doesn't relate to you directly. And equally, in B2B, most of the products and services are very high consideration purchases, right? They take a long time. There's multiple stakeholders involved in the ultimate buy decision. We basically look at it. There's a committee sitting around a table. Literally had an example of this 2 weeks ago with a client who's talking to a prospect. We were on a Zoom call. There were 6 people on the prospect side from different departments throwing questions at us and asking things, all of them coming from a different perspective. So this idea of understanding all of your multiple stakeholders in your audiences, their functions, their drivers, their goals. I mean, even to the point of, we should be able to have a pretty good idea. What is a CMO tasked with year to year? What does the CMO is required to deliver? And how does our product or service help that person, right? Very individually.
Marian, when we think about med tech, I mean, you could have a room full of 30 people you're actually selling to very easily, right? And each of them with a super different perspective, right?
Right.
A finance person's thinking about how much something costs. A scientist is thinking about, is it do you have efficacy rolled in?
Right.
The clinical person is thinking about how easy is this for my staff to implement? So this can be a super complex selling process, right? And take a long time.
It is. And it really starts with what I like to call stakeholder mapping. A lot of people call it a lot of different things. But, so let's go back a step. Probably the foundational piece of this is understanding the customer journey. But a customer journey is not as simple as saying, I'm going to sell it into that category. These are the types of customers, and this is the journey that they go through. That's true. Your financial decision maker is going to go through a different journey. Your CMOs or your marketing person is going to go through a different journey. The people who influence those people in the decision are going to go through a different journey. Here's a really good example. We had a client a few years ago, and when we started working with them, their pipeline was stalled. You guys remember this? And we discovered that the reason their pipeline was stalled is because they were so excited about their own science that they were talking about their own science to like-minded scientists. And the scientists were literally there to do the bench work. They had no budget. They had no power over the decision of whether or not the company was going to adopt this ingredient, right? So the conversations they were having were great, but they weren't with people who were ultimately going to decide to buy their product. So
they weren't with all the stakeholders, right? They were with one stakeholder.
Right. They were talking to one stakeholder and doing it very efficiently and successfully. But to build their pipeline, we really had to take a step back and say, okay, hang on a second. Who are all the people that are ultimately going to be at the decision-making table? We need to talk to all of them. And you asked a really good question, Barb, about how can we talk to multiple stakeholders on the website? So, you kind of talk about the top level, your storefront, your core message should resonate with everyone, right? And the expression of the brand should resonate with everyone. But the value proposition becomes a little bit different. Like the CFO, how's it going to affect me financially? The guys in the production line, in this particular example, were really worried about the fact that to bring this ingredient in, they were going to have to change processes. And you have to talk to them as well. So that's where Martha's point, landing pages, blog posts. And then when you get into the sales part of it and the nurturing part of it, what are you doing with emails? Are they going to certain kinds of industry conferences? Do you understand them and what they need at that kind of a conference? Stakeholder mapping is really the foundation to successful growth in the respect of, you may have somebody in your organization who needs to go to a particular type of conference to talk to a particular decision maker in your industry, which is different from your science guys going to a science conference and talking about all the bells and whistles.
How do we prioritize? How talk a little bit about how we help clients prioritize those key stakeholders, because not all budgets can afford to talk to the decision makers and 5 influencers, right?
Right.
I love that.
Right. That's a great question. I think it's a combination. We've learned that it's a combination, not just of the stakeholders, but also let's talk for a minute about who you're targeting. So in B2B, very often, you're not just targeting one category or one subsegment of an industry, right? So you might be talking to 5 different subsegments in an industry. And I know we're going to talk about this as well, Barb. At some point, you have to make some hard decisions about what are the ones that are going to deliver the highest return in the shortest period of time. So if that's a particular segment, then that's the one we focus on. And then you focus a little bit less maybe on the areas that are uncomfortable to you because you're a group of scientists, but you need to talk to the money people. Like these are the kinds of decisions you make. You kind of are just whittling down to an area of focus. It doesn't mean that you forget about all the rest, because your point, Martha, you could write a blog post for the other audiences, or maybe you do it quarter by quarter or half year by half year. We're going to focus here now. We're going to focus there next. And we're just going to keep building the pipeline like that.
Yeah. We had this story with one of our other clients, right? Which was one segment was a full year sales cycle, right? Yeah. Another segment was a 3-month cycle, right? So, and of course, the one that's a longer one was the bigger dollar customer for sure, right? But what do? We can't win at the long haul without doing some quick wins for the shorter business. So you kind of have to balance it, right? And I think that's how we prioritize that business, but it can be different for every client.
That makes me think of a question. I think this is the conundrum of all conundrums for startups. How do I wait and build a brand when I so desperately need to build the pipeline? Like, do I do both at the same time?
It's called the plate juggle.
And I know, Barb, you and I've had some hardcore discussions.
You have to do both, right?
Because I'm always like, no, you can't do both. But you have to, but you can't. And so that's a challenge.
Yeah, I know. It's the practicalities, right? Yeah. That we try to balance all the time. And it's always a balance, no matter what, right? For any company, really.
We've built a lot of planes. Yeah, while they're flying.
I don't know. I think, some of this is, some of it is thinking about marketing in its traditional sense, really being in service of what are you doing on the sales side, right? And that is sometimes hard for people to wrap their heads around, especially traditional marketers, because in B2B and in a startup and a scale-up world, everything is about driving growth. Barb likes to say it, up and to the right. That is what you are going for every day. And that's what your team is collectively going for and measured on, and your investors are measuring you on, and all that sort of thing, right? So the brand foundation is so important, so that everything you do then from there, to answer your point, Martha, you have to do both. You don't pile them on top of each other. It's a little bit sequential, but we also we have now become trained, right, in understanding that those financial and growth goals really are the drivers of what we do across all communications.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And we have to stop thinking of either or, right? Many
Right.
marketers, right? I hear it all the time. Oh, they're a
Yeah.
brand person. They're
Right.
not a performance person,
Right.
right?
Right.
And the fact of the matter is we must do both,
Yes.
because if we don't serve the brand, we can be delivering some great mechanized performance metrics. But if we get our messages wrong, if we haven't thought it through from the beginning, if we haven't built our foundation correctly, we're going to be wasting a ton of money
Yeah.
across the board.
And you may become commoditized because someone will do what you do a little better next
Right.
week. And yeah.
Right.
And also the messages are maybe not sticky enough and you lose them in the pipeline along the customer journey. That's the other challenge that companies run into.
Right. So this brings us to our last little kind of key learning, I think. So we talked about, foundation, how important that is. We talked about the audience, they're king. Customer is king, please. Okay, right, all the time. But I think we have found in some of these, in some of our startups and some of our engagements, that defining success, right, Mary, to what you just said, is really important. And the closer and the more clarity you can get on that, the better you're going to be as a steward of those of that client's dollars, of the salesperson as a partner, et cetera. And I find it to be a super helpful tool for me if somebody defines success. And I'll give you an example. One of my old bosses started out and said, you know what? I'm not sure how long, you will be in this leadership role. I'm in a leadership role for about 3 to 5 years typically. But in this leadership role, here's what you have to do. We have to launch successfully. We have to actually create stickiness with our customers. So that's retention, right? And then we believe that we need to elevate the skill set of our team, right? Elevate our digital transformation, make sure we're data driven, et cetera. And so those three components were kind of an area that I was focused on. And that was super helpful.
Because you knew what, you had focus.
Yeah. How about, what do you think, Marian? When we're given a success metric, it's a little bit easier. You're familiar with pipeline all the time, right? I need to make sure pipeline happens.
Well, yeah. A success metric is only as good as understanding what the components of it are and where it's all going to come from. Coming back to the earlier example about a client having multiple categories, you can say you want to do $2 million revenue straight out of the gate, right? In the first 12 months. Well, okay, first of all, how long is the sales cycle? If the sales cycle is 18 months, then we maybe have to translate those metrics into something that's achievable. If the sales cycle is shorter, then the question is, where's that 2 million going to come from? You made the point earlier, Barb, about the idea that some are 3 months, but those are the smaller pieces, right? Am I going to get three, $200,000 clients? And am I going to get two $500,000 clients? Making the metrics, I think we've all seen this, making the metrics really precise and drilling down and understanding where we expect those numbers to come from also really helps the people on the marketing side and the communication side and the content side know what they need to be saying at every step of this journey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Saves
Yeah.
a lot of money.
Okay. So the sales it's not just a top line
Correct.
adventure. So talk about how you drill down to get to the strategy. That's really the cornerstone of your strategy, bottoms up.
Yeah. So Martha likes to use this example of a client when we went in and they literally said they put a number on the board. And I was like, okay, well, that's great. So we're going to do ABM because it's a very consultative sales process for this product, right? There's a lot to talk about. It disrupts production, et cetera. So there's a lot of things we have to head off at the pass. All right. So where's the sales number going to come from? And as we started to drill down, we realized that out of 5 potential segment in a category, there was really only one that they had thought they would go after. There were only 5 potential clients. There was no way we were going to reach those numbers with those 5 potential clients. So then we had to rethink it and really be like, okay, maybe that's not the category. Maybe that's a secondary category. Maybe we should focus on another category with a bigger audience. But then we started to drill down, and we do this for everyone when we're doing sales planning. Then you have to drill down and you have to say, at the end of the day, the number that I need is I need to know how many people I need to talk to get to this. Right. And
you
that's
got a waterfall is.
Yeah,
Right.
it's a whole exercise of, there are 5 companies in that category. There are 4 key stakeholders at each company, which means I have a universe, right, of 20. I need to talk to all those 20 people really effectively. And it's a Q1 strategy. And that's maybe what it's going to deliver in 6 months. Barb, you like to talk about how important the metrics are and how important drilling down into the details are. And I think that's a discipline that we've all learned. I'm curious, I'm going to throw the question back at you. When you're working with CEOs in some of these fractional marketing roles that you've had while we've been together as Health Mavens, how do you help coach them through this exercise? Because sometimes you really need to help them think about it differently.
Yeah, that's a huge question. It's a great question, right? And by the way, this isn't just a question about, CEOs and leadership. It's a question about everybody we work with, we deal with in life. It's our husband, it's our family, it's our everybody.
Yeah.
Which is we teach people how to be good partners to us, right? And it's the same way with how you work with a leadership team or your peers in working. I think it's kind of like I had a client who was really not a super big communicator. And I had to jump in and communicate for us both, right? And I mean, because I needed feedback from him and, I wasn't going to take no for an answer. But anyway, I've had that before too. A good colleague of mine said, I didn't have a lot of time with my CEO, which was a problem for me as a leader. And I said, well, you got to corner him and you got to, maybe be, at least align a meeting every couple of weeks for 30 minutes and say, this is really important to my development and how we're aligned in the corporation. So you do have to teach people how to be good partners to you. And I think that's super important. But also aligning on the success metric, because sometimes people don't tell you what they really need sometimes, right? They'll say, build the brand. Awesome. Everybody, everybody wants to build the brand.
What does that mean?
I want to build a brand or I need sales.
Right. And sometimes, I need to make pipeline on this time frame.
Right.
So let's really dig in on that is an okay thing to do. I say share your challenges, with each other. That's really important.
Yeah.
Time frame. Sorry, you mentioned time frame. I think that's a hugely important part of metrics, right?
Yeah, it is too. It's kind of like that helps you with expectations. We have found in our consulting, right, that having checkpoints are really important because people are fearful that you're going to go away and create something and they're not going to see it, right? And then they lose kind of engagement with that process. So to me, it's like making sure that we're having checkpoints along the way, saying, here's what I'm learning. By the way, you don't have to have the correct answer all the time, but you do have to have learned something, either fail fast or, try to learn something really quickly about how to grow the business. I think that's critical.
Yeah. I was just going to quickly touch on performance metrics for Build the Brand are super elusive, but there are specific data points that you can set up before you did anything and afterwards. Whether it's engagement on the website or specific engagement with specific content or how someone has moved a little through their journey, you can attribute a lot of that. If you're working on a brand messaging campaign, you can track that stuff.
Good point, Martha. I mean, everybody's kind of like, how do I measure brand success, right? We had a great person that does some great work in the consumer area too for big, large brands, helping them really connect the dots on some of that. But it's hard, it is, but website and, you could easily peg your pipeline achievement, right? Did I make it or did I not?
Yeah. But social engagement is a great way to measure that too. But anyway, that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother time.
Well, I think the things that we've talked about here, the three foundational things, if there's one takeaway from this little chat, is that if you're at a stage with your company, either you're starting out fresh and you have a brand and you have a great product, but you kind of don't know where to go, or you're in the market, but now there's a new category or a new country or a new area that you want to expand into, or you've got a new product launch coming up, or you're at a scale up and you're really at that pivotal point where you're going after the next round of funding, right? Series A, or whatever those things are. These three things that we always address with every client, which are foundationally, what does the brand stand for and how are we expressing that brand to our audience? What do our stakeholders need from us in order for them to purchase and adopt our product? And what are the metrics that we need not only to create and understand, but to measure against? These are the things that I feel like, I hope you guys agree with me, but I feel like there's a little bit of us translating for them. There's a little bit of us coaching our clients in understanding all of these things and then actually delivering and doing the work, right? And bringing it to life successfully.
Well summarized, Marion. That's perfect. So if people want to get a hold of us and just talk through some problems or challenges that they're having in business, they should hop on over to the Health Mavens website, right? And we'll link that down.
We love to have free ideation sessions because we have a very hard time not giving away thoughts.
That's right. That's right. We're here to solve problems.
We're here to solve problems.
All right.
Right. Thanks for listening.
Here's to a great year.